Pigs by Chris Mack. Narrated by Kester Lovelace. Sound design by Geoff Chong. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy had none. This little piggy went wee 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 all the way home. Mother Goose. This little piggy went to the market and bought stock options. His name was Brian. This little piggy stayed at home, drank beer, pretended to be a writer, but instead became hooked on web series and did nothing with his life. He questioned why he was such a loser until he died sometime later. His name doesn't matter to this story because no one, not even in the family, ever talked about him. Not because he was a bad pig, just a nearly invisible one. The brother pigs had hardly been aware of his existence, even when he had been a quiet and moody little piglet during their childhood. They all assumed he had died of an alcohol-related disease or some other form of suicide, but this was not the case. This little piggy, Arnold, had roast beef for breakfast, as well as eggs, a sugary cereal, cheese, diverse fatty products, cakes, chips, and some beer. This was his habit every morning. Consequently, when he died some years later, everyone assumed that he had died of heart-related cholesterol poisoning, but this was not the case, nor the cause of his death. Still, there was a big and festive funeral for him because Arnold had enjoyed life and made many friends between meals, and everyone wanted a piece of the bacon. The little piggy who had none was named Pinky. Pinky was a weaner, the technical name for the runt of the litter. He'd supposedly been killed in a hit-and-run by an anonymous driver. No one in the family knew of his death, as he had changed his name and moved far away to another city. They all assumed he was alive and well, but this was not the case. Arnold's funeral should have brought the remaining pigs together. Arnold's brother, George, was the pig who ran all the way home. George was a handsome pig of a male who slept with many women and fancied himself a bit of a cordon bleu type Frenchie in the romantic wooing department vis-à-vis creatures of the opposite sex. He was a real bore. George nonetheless managed to seduce the funeral director and went crying, "Wee wee, oh wee," all the way home with her. But George's home had been demolished by the B.B. Wolf Construction Company, blown apart with a huff and a puff of a wrecking ball. This state of affairs did not sit well with the funeral home director, a dry yet hopeful woman of a certain age, who suddenly realised that George was a bit of a phony, and not the answer to her loneliness, especially because he was still trying to grope her in front of the ruins of his own home, and also he'd assumed she'd be fine with a quickie atop the rubble. So she left him in front of the shambled ruins of his pigsty and went to her own home. She now realised that she had no need of any males, particularly chauvinist womanising pigs, because, let's be frank, who does really? But that is another story. As for the other pigs, Brian the stockbroker squealed with surprise to find his brother George lounging about in the giant loft apartment of his fancy high-rise building, indolently lazing on the designer couch, and, it must be said, lasciviously gorging himself on Brian's supply of chocolate and guzzling his favourite private reserve of finely aged cognac. "What on earth are you doing here?" Brian demanded in outrage.
"My home has been destroyed. I trotted over here to you for your help, dear brother. Eldest fruit of the same deliciously obese sow, my dearest Brian."
George wept, nonetheless managing to pop another bonbon in his mouth between melodramatic sobs and to gauge his brother's reactions through tear-filled pink eyes. And how did you get past the doorman? And why weren't you at Arnold's funeral? What irked Brian most was that even while stuffing his piggish face, his brother George looked so good doing it. Delicious George. Brian had never had any luck with girls, or boys, or even farmyard animals for that matter. But he knew how to calculate and how to invest. He was the big piggy bank of financiers. Nobody liked him much, really. He had a certain odour, but his clients nonetheless invested with him because he knew how to make them a good profit, and he didn't mind getting a little dirty to eke out that extra buck.
Oh, that's nothing. It's easy to get past doormen when you know how to talk to people, George snuffled dismissively. And quite honestly, that funeral didn't look like my idea of a good time. They never are. Wakes, however, that's where the fun is. There's nothing like a good wake to get a woman drunk, warm and wild and ready to celebrate life with a good fuck or six. Sit up, you dirty pig. Get your hooves off my couch. You're turning my home into a sty.
George sat up. Quit your whining, brother, and listen to me. The wolf is back.
The wolf? Impossible.
Brian snatched the bottle of cognac from his brother and began to clean it off with a moist, disinfecting towelette. The outbreak had made Brian deathly afraid of dying. He had nightmares about being sent to the abattoir and squeezed into sausages eaten by the same clients he served so well. During the COVID crisis, he'd ordered boxes of these wipes so he could stay healthy and pure. Although Brian was not always overly fond of cleanliness, his brother was too slovenly even for him. Sleaze! Brian himself tried to hide the fact that he was a pig, although everyone who met him saw it. His piggish nature. It was why, despite all his riches, he was so profoundly unhappy. "I'm telling you, it's him," George insisted. "You know what they say about the boy who cried wolf," Brian said dryly, sitting down in front of his computer where he knew he was the king pig. "I knew the bank was going to foreclose on you sooner or later. You haven't kept up with your payments in, years now? And that part of town is ripe for development. They demolished my house and they left a sign. B.B. Wolf Construction. Ring any bells, brother of mine?" "Let me check this out," Brian grunted, connecting to his network, his search engines, his hooves tapping along the keyboard with incredible speed and facility. The muck and slime of the internet were his true home. "I was just about to get laid, too. I was almost inside this goddess. I mean, she was really hot to trot. And then we arrived at my place to make the beast with two backs, only there was no more place to rut. Just ruins. Everything demolished. And she just left me there, all alone," wailed George. "Shut up and let me concentrate," Brian snorted, peering at his screen with his beady little eyes. "OK. Your bank foreclosed over a year ago. Didn't you pay any attention to the eviction notices?" "Oh, those things. I tend to avoid focusing on things like that," George grunted dismissively, his mouth plump with chocolates. "Or I talk my way out of such formalities." "You're right. The demolition permit was filed by Big Bad Wolf Construction Limited," Brian confirmed. George bolted upright. "You see, it's him. He's back. It's just the two of us now. The rest of us are gone. But what are we going to do?" "Oh, what are we going to do?" George wailed. "We killed the wolf. You've seen the video. The goons we hired filmed it all on GoPros strapped to their heads. I can show you again if you'd like. I've kept a copy." And so he played the video for his brother to reassure him. They watched, without sound, as there had been no microphones on the cameras, as the large and cruel men they'd employed for the task slit the wolf's throat and burnt his den. George generally avoided actual violence that was not also sexual in nature, so he turned away for the part in the video where the men killed the wolf's bitch and burned the cubs alive. Brian, however, kept watching, with a piggish delight in the methodical nature of the men's work. He'd hired only the best, as always. He was a pig. They were both pigs. Boars. Smart, but mean. There, you see? The wicked old wolf is dead. Brian closed the video file with satisfaction. Our brothers are dead. My house is destroyed. You mark my words. The wolf is coming for you next. Pinky's not dead, said Brian, not knowing the truth of the matter, that Pinky had been killed, unloved, in a hit and run. Now, shut up and let me try to identify the owner of BB Wolf Construction. I'm going to try to hack their site. Pinky never mattered, George shrugged. Do you have any cocaine lying about? If I'm going to die, I want to have a good time before I go. Kitchen cupboard, top left shelf, Brian said, immediately regretting his answer. But I was saving that for... Suddenly, Brian's computer beeped an email notification. Brian clicked open his mail and squealed with alarm. What? What is it? Oinked his brother, lifting his head up from the hastily organised line of cocaine he'd been snuffling up from the countertop. It's him! A zoomling from the wolf! Brian stared at the screen in horror. Don't open it! George wailed. But Brian had already clicked on the link. And there he was, on the screen. The wolf. He was missing one eye. One of his fangs was completely replaced with a titanium tooth, sharp and machine-like. He was so burned that his remaining fur and scabby flesh had fused into a mottled, leprous, muddy colour. A huge scar ran across his neck. The two pigs watched him in horror. When the wolf spoke, it was in a hoarse, whispery voice. Every word sounded chopped by pain. You murdered my family. You destroyed my wife, Renee, my light and my life. I can still hear the cries of the cubs in my ears. I was helpless to protect them. We didn't mean to. It was an accident, George lied, doing everything he could to escape the wolf's glare. But he was frozen, transfixed by the eye of the wolf. His brother Brian whimpered quietly to himself, but he too was rooted in place. You destroyed my life, simply because I'm a wolf. I never did anything to you. Now I'm going to destroy you. What are you going to do to us? Brian trembled. When you clicked on my email link, you gave me access into your system. I put a worm into your network. You'll find all your financial assets are gone. You should have put me in your spam. No! I've killed your three brothers. 2 by painful poisons, 1 by running him over repeatedly with an ice cream truck. Pinky, Brian whispered. Now, I'm coming for you. This building has maximum security and is completely fortified. You'll never get in, said Brian. It's easy to get past doormen when you know how to talk to people. Isn't that right, George? No, George wailed. You're next. I am coming, whispered the big bad wolf calmly with his gravelly voice. Please don't kill me, begged Brian, who, although he almost always avoided violence, nonetheless pulled out a revolver from his desk and shot down his brother George in front of the image of the wolf. See? I've killed my own brother for you. Please spare me. Too late for that. He's just so much meat now. Just like you will soon be. My home has maximum security. So you think. And on the screen, the big bad wolf assumed the mantle of the hunter before the last cowering pig who had destroyed his family, his life, and all of his joy. Now a different, dark joy was filling him, ferocious and savage. Some rituals are worth preserving, observed the big bad wolf. He cleared his throat the way one does before uttering a formal speech. I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. Brian the pig screamed and squealed. The wolf was